Welcome back. This is Lee and Allison from the Law School Toolbox, and today we are going to be talking about what you can do now to get ready for law school.
All right. Well, moving on to our next question. What supplies and technology do I need to purchase over the summer?
Oh, this is always such a big one because there is this feeling that everyone needs new stuff. But I feel like I'm always constantly asking students not to use new stuff. so
I need a whole new system. It's like, maybe not.
Maybe not. So you do need a working computer because you're going to be doing computer work. So if you don't have a stable computer, it doesn't need to be the fastest and most powerful computer, but it needs to be stable. It needs to be able to run Dropbox or some other kind of file backup system. You need stable internet connection. You're going to be writing papers and, you're not doing really amazing tech stuff that needs huge
heavy
computers,
graphics.
Right.
No.
Editing videos or something like that. But you do want it to be stable. So I think that's all what I would say is if you do not have a stable computer, you probably want a stable computer. Most likely you're going to want a computer to sit for the bar when it comes bar time. And so you also need a stable computer for that. So sometimes I like to have people think of it as like, if you're in law school for 3 years, you definitely are going to at some point need a computer that's very stable for the bar. So you kind of time it out looking at that horizon.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. If you have a perfectly functional computer, there's no reason to buy another one right now for law school. You can buy one in a couple of years and then use that for the bar. I think outside of the tech realm, I think thinking about ways to stay organized and whether some of those are physical is a great idea. So you might, one of our favorite notebooks, for example, for taking notes is the Circa system. We don't get paid to endorse them, unfortunately, but we do love them. We do love them. So, whether it's going to be a bunch of legal pads or something like that, but I think there's a strong argument to look at taking notes by hand. You can also, have the sort of tech by hand there. I forgot what those things I sent to you are called. But anyway, there's certain things you can write on.
Yeah. There's like the Kindle Scribe, and then there's like another one that's its own thing,
which I'm forgetting the name of. But anyway, some people love those, some people don't. But, something like that, like thinking through what are your systems going to look like, I think is a great idea. And that includes even almost silly things like tabs and highlighters. I went through an insane amount of highlighters because I book briefed everything. So I had to have my 4 to 5 colors on me at all times. But, stuff like that, I think sounds kind of crazy to worry about, but those are the sort of things that you can think through, kind of what's worked for you in the past. How are you going to tab your notes or your books or anything like that, and just go ahead and get all that set up now.
Yeah. I also, for fun, read, besides books about law school, books about organization and executive functioning. I mean, I'm like the best dinner party guest. It's like,
right,
don't you want to hear about what I've been working on?
Seriously.
But one of the things that I find interesting is there is this push to put together a binder, like to go back to kind of these old school techniques that, you and I grew up with, where we had, in this one book I read, she was talking about those little hole punch reinforcement rings. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah.
So to make sure that the pages wouldn't fall out, or if they get ripped out, you could do the little holes. It was like a donut.
Patch it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I had totally forgotten about those. I remember having those in my binder. We're not talking like Trapper Keepers, but like an actual 3-ring binder. But I will say that it is an interesting question to say, how are you going to manage the paperwork in your life? If you're going to take paper notes, how are you going to organize them and make sure you don't lose them? If you find out your professors are giving you handouts in class, even though some professors will do things like electronically in PowerPoint, what are you going to do with those? How are you going to make sure they don't get lost? Don't just start shoving them in a folder, or then you just have a folder full of disorganized stuff, which is terrible too. So, I think it's a good idea to kind of assess what you've done in the past that has worked for you. And if you had an organizational scheme in undergrad, you should keep it. Don't toss it. But if you didn't, if you were able to just keep all of the plates spinning in undergrad, it's possible you won't be able to in law school. So I think sometimes it can be easy as a hole punch. What we love about the Levenger Circa notebooks is there's a special type of hole punch, which basically allows you to do the same thing, but it's not as bulky as a binder. So there are lots of options, but you definitely couldn't find yourself swimming in papers or emails from your class or supplemental things. And then when it comes time to outline, you're kind of like, what, did my professor send me something? Like, I don't remember.
Right. Well, that makes me think too, even if you don't have a paper organizational system because you don't have that much paper, you also need to have an organizational system for these type of documents electronically.
Yes.
So, if you're getting emails or you're getting, I even think of things like student loans, like this is really important information that you're going to need to access later. So just go ahead and have some sort of backup, whether it's Dropbox or whatever you want. But have all that stuff go into that now so that you're not looking for it years from now.
Yes. And I will say, and I use this, I feel like almost every day, is the scan to Dropbox feature on my phone. Basically, almost anything that comes in that's on paper gets scanned to Dropbox and then shredded, because one, I don't want to keep paper. But also, if you just get into that habit, then whenever you're looking for something, I can be pretty sure that it's been scanned to a file in Dropbox. And so,
exactly.
You just have to create these habits for yourself so things don't get too sloppy. Yeah. Even like Blue Books love to be tabbed. A physical Blue Book, a lot of people find is easier than the electronic Blue Book. You probably need to use both, but that's kind of its own thing. You also want to have like a solid backpack or a rolling bag, or like, how are you going to carry all this stuff? It's, it sounds silly, but like, it's really hard. It's heavy. Like, you end up carrying a lot of stuff.
Oh, I remember before I went to law school, I went to a store in San Francisco and they made custom messenger bags.
Oh,
and
Timbuktu?
Picked out I think it was maybe a Timbuktu, but I picked out my colors and I was like really happy with it. And I put all these books in it. I was like, wow, this was not the best choice. But I did carry it for multiple years through all of law school, even though in retrospect, having like a normal backpack or something probably would have made more sense.
I also started law school with a Timbuktu messenger bag, but I ended up having the messenger bag and then all my books in my arms. Or sometimes also a purse. Like, it was just a lot. And then my lunch, it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, out of pride, I refused to get rid of that bag, but I recognize that it was probably not the best choice.
Yeah,
So be practical.
Be practical. This is not like your coolest moment. This is a practical moment. If you enjoyed this video, please take a second to give us a like, leave us a comment, and make sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any future content. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on the contact form at lawschooltoolbox.com.
And stay tuned for the next video in this series.